Hello, I'm Eliana, and in this video I'll be showing you how to navigate Cloudbeaver. Cloudbeaver is a browser-based database management tool that FLOW uses to run SQL reports for FOLIO. As of this recording, Cloudbeaver is the most powerful and flexible tool we have for querying the system. It can be used to collect statistics or to run ad hoc reports for data management projects or troubleshoot issues. So when you first log into Cloudbeaver, this is what you'll see. It might look slightly different for you depending on your level of permissions, but I'm an admin, so I can basically see everything. Cloudbeaver has 3 panes. We've got the left side pane here, which has all of the connections to each library system. You can see it's in alphabetical order, and we have production connections as well as sandbox connections for every single library in Flow. This will let you run reports against your sandbox folio or your production folio. In the middle here, we have our SQL editing pane. So nothing here right now, but this is where you can pull up your reports and also see the results of those reports, which I'll show you in a moment. Over here on the right, these are folders for storing saved reports for all of our libraries. So every time we get a new library, we add a new folder. And if you want to see your reports, you can just expand it like so. If you don't see this third pane, it might be hidden for you the first time you log in. You're going to want to click on this wrench button and click on show scripts. If you click on that, it'll hide or show that third pane. So for Cloudbeaver, you're welcome to write your own reports as a library if you have the confidence to do that, or if you have someone who has the SQL know-how to do that. But if you don't feel confident or you don't have the time, Flow is perfectly happy to write reports for you. Just request a report via our help desk and we will create it for you, and then we'll plop it in your folder and you'll be able to find and run it from there. With these 3 panes, there is some customizability here, so you can make them smaller or bigger. This can be especially handy if you have reports that have really long names. You can make this, you can make this pane bigger to see the full list, or smaller if you want it out of the way. Also, if you really want a pane out of the way, there are buttons for that. So you can see these little arrow buttons allow you to collapse panes as well and bring them back. Sometimes it's nice to have a big clean screen when you're writing SQL. Regarding the saved reports, the way that you're going to run those is really simple. All you got to do is double click. So if I double click on this report here, it'll bring up my SQL that someone wrote. And then over here on the left-hand side, you can see a play button. This will let me execute the SQL statement. And from there, I can see the results of that report. After I run the report, I can then go down here and I can get a total count of how many rows are in my report, which, maybe isn't as relevant for this report, but if you take a look at a longer report, it's nice to be able to see how many rows I got without having to scroll to the bottom here. Sometimes if the report is really long, you have to click on this to calculate how many rows, but with shorter reports like this, you don't have to do that. One really important thing to remember is to acknowledge what system you're running your report against. So you can see that up here in the toolbar. You want to make sure that if you're trying to query your production system, that you're not querying your test system, and you're not querying someone else's system. So right now, these are the books by location counts for Wentworth's test system, but if I wanted to see those counts for their production system, I would just come up here and then click on Wentworth prod. And then I could rerun the report and get updated counts for that system. So in terms of exporting the results of a report, you're just going to go down here, you're going to say export. And then you have a bunch of different options here for the file type that you're going to export. For example, of course, we've got the Excel spreadsheet. And you're just going to go say next. and then export. And then that file is going to process, and then you can click on download to get it from your browser up here. As you can see, we also have options like CSV, and there is some customizability here where if you're doing a CSV, you can change the delimiter, which is pretty handy. You can also change things like quotes if you need to. But yeah, same deal here. You just click on export, download, and then your CSV will pop up. So in terms of creating new reports, I can do that by clicking on this SQL button right here. And this will just bring up a nice blank SQL editor. Whether or not you have access to this, again, depends on your permissions. Our admin level accounts have access to edit SQL and create new SQL reports, and then our basic accounts do not. When you're writing SQL, one thing that can be really handy is to take a look over on the left side pane and look at your tables. If I go ahead and expand Simmons Sandbox, for example, I can go over here and see all the schema I have access to. So in FOLIO, all of the schema are kind of representing your different apps, your different subject areas. And then I can go deeper than that. So if I expand the courses schema, for example, I can go ahead and look at all of the courses tables. And then if I go ahead and double click on one, I can actually see inside that table. So I can see all the rows, see what the data looks like, which can be helpful if you're writing like a where statement. Another thing I find very helpful for when I'm just writing my select statement is to go over and look at the properties and the columns, because then I can see all of the columns that are available in that table, as well as what data type they are, if that's important. So one nice thing is you don't have to really memorize all of the table names because Cloudbeaver has an autocomplete feature. So if I just start typing, well, first of all, it'll give me some hints on how to write SQL in general, but if you start writing a schema name like courses and then a period, it'll give you that list of tables that you have access to. So I like to look over here just to remind myself what tables are available, but you can also just get them here as well by typing it out. So if I go ahead and I select everything from the courses table, this is also another way to get a quick look at a table if you just select everything. In terms of saving your SQL that you write, there's going to be a save button right here. So you just click on that, and then it's going to ask you to give it a name. I usually like to put today's date when I'm naming my SQL, but that's optional. And you're going to say save. SQL in Cloudbeaver does automatically save outside of the folders, the library folders. So we do ask that when you're writing SQL and you're saving it, that you go ahead and drag and drop it into your libraries folder so that we can keep this area neat and we can identify which reports belong to who. While you're playing around in Cloudbeaver, it's probably best to stick to your own reports. You can use other libraries' reports as a reference, but please, obviously do not edit and do not delete those reports because they don't belong to your library. If you are new to SQL but you want to experiment, one thing that might be helpful is to copy from what already exists. So for example, if I go back to that report I had open earlier, I can go ahead and highlight everything, copy it, open a new SQL editor, and copy and paste that SQL. And then I can go and run it in a different system. And then I can even go ahead and edit it and make it my own. You could go up here and add fields too if you needed to. You're perfectly welcome to create SQL reports that way by starting with a base of someone else's report. Just be really careful not to overwrite the original report and save it as your own report instead. One final thing is that when you're managing your own reports over here, you can, first of all, you can create subfolders if you'd like. This works where whatever folder you're clicked into, if you click on this add a folder button, it'll make a subfolder of the folder that you currently have expanded. You can also go ahead and rename any of these SQL reports. And of course you can delete, but be very careful with deleting reports. Preferably just delete the ones that you create, not anything that your coworkers create or other libraries create without permission. That about covers everything in terms of navigating Cloudbeaver. Thank you for watching.